Hey, what's up? Something I've wanted to do for a while now is a tier list. I think the tier lists that do exist on the internet by Weidenbaum and maybe DJ Parson and also Pitor made a tier list recently. They are all for 3 player or 4 player only. I don't think there exists a 2 player tier list. So here you go, there you go. I'm doing it specifically a tier list for 2 player. And yeah, important disclaimer, TTA is maybe a hard game to apply the concept of a tier list because every card is pretty situational. So if you have a card that's higher on the tier list and a card that's lower on the tier list, it doesn't mean that the one higher will always be the one to pick in a certain situation. I think it's more healthy to think of it as a probability distribution, maybe. So keep that in mind. I will here and there go try to include something like a value ceiling and a value floor of the card and how it affects the placing in the tier list, because that can be vastly different for all those leaders and wonders. And A tier is strong, B tier is okay, D tier is rather weak, C tier is I'm not that happy to play that, and S tier is the top of the top. Maybe a bit too good, although that's also a vague definition, I would say. Let's go. Alex. I've actually not pre-thought the tier list. I think I have like one entry. Let's start with that. Hammurabi is S tier. We'll talk about it later. I think that's the only one I have a strong opinion of here. Alex. Where does he go? B tier, I think. Yeah. Alex has a pretty high ceiling in my book, but overall not the best value. So there are these cases where you play him and you get a H1 leader replacement super early on, and then you are ahead. You have your extra yellow token, you spend a civil action for that, and then you get a Saladin or a Gutenberg in the next turn, or maybe 2 turns later, and then you're just golden. This is super good. So I'm not unhappy if I have to take Alex, but if I have other options, I will take other options because they are more solid in their value. Because if this follow-up leader doesn't come, then it's a bit awkward. This early yellow token doesn't do that much for you. It's like, let's for example compare it to Hippocrates, who gives arguably 2 yellow tokens, but the second yellow token comes end of H2 and the first yellow token comes end of H1. And it's not that huge a difference whether you get this yellow token end of H1 or start of H1. It's not worth the civil action difference. So yeah, I would say it's not D tier. I would say it's like bottom of B tier, and I'm not that unhappy because it's a bet where you sometimes can win in value. Then all of a sudden it's even hard. Like Alex into Saladin, it's maybe S tier value, but Alex just like that, not that clear. Aristotle. On paper, that's not bad. And I think some players value him maybe like A tier. But I'm somehow hesitant to take him, and every time I take him, it's like, okay, he gave me 2 signs or something, or maybe 3, and then he baited me into a 4th science for a civil action, for a card that I'm never going to play. And yeah, he's not bad. he might be like top of B tier, but I'm hesitant to put him in A tier. I don't think there's many games where he shines. There are maybe some. Obviously, there's a good synergy with the pyramids. And if you get the Code of Laws early on and you are on 6 civil actions, then he's producing some signs. You still have to be careful not to just simply take random cards because it says, it gives me a science, and then you break your hand with theologies or something. So, yeah, close to A tier maybe, but rather top of B tier. Ashoka. They just all go to B tier, huh? Ashoka. It's actually interesting. I think I put him here. What did I say? D tier is rather weak. B tier is average. I think he's rather weak into player. Hard to put my finger on it. I'm not extremely unhappy if I have to play him. But mostly, in most cases, you want to get rid of him as soon as any H1 leader comes. And until then, in most cases, he produced you something like 1 or 2 rocks. And that's kind of underwhelming. And yeah, I guess there's a common theme for many leaders here, that they get better with the pyramids. And then all of a sudden you have some more options to actually gain value from him. It's a little easier to take those cards and hold them in hand. I think the thing is, you just don't want to trigger this condition, especially of 3 cards. You want to play the cards that you take. You don't want to leave them lying around in hand. And maybe if you have an early pyramids, if you have an early Code of Laws, then it's a little bit easier. And then, but still, if an H1 leader drops, most of them have a value that's probably better than this. So, yeah. I'm not extremely unhappy if I have to play him. But it's really, I would, in most cases, choose other options. Boudica. Boudica goes to A tier. She's pretty strong. It can be annoying if the opponent plays a Sun Tzu or something that gives him a random strength, and you have to use those rocks for the military, because you don't want to build a random warrior early on, especially if it means that you have to delay your philosophy for 1 or 2 turns even. But later on, those 2 rocks can often come in handy if the opponent wants to play some strength events and get stronger. Then you have just these 2 rocks, which are quite valuable for a knight or something. Yeah, for any unit, they can upgrade 2 warrior to swordsman. And the basic ability of just choosing mostly 1 science, but sometimes you choose the rock or food because it makes your turn better. But other than that, it's mostly a science per turn. Overall, super solid. And a very good option in a lot of game states. Just be wary of the randoms on Caesar strength. It can make her a little awkward to play, actually. Caesar. Okay. Yeah, he goes to C tier, I think. It's a bit of a, yeah. He has his like existence as a counter to maybe Boudica or maybe Hammurabi, but that's maybe a good anchor to discuss Caesar. If he's supposed to be the counter of Hammurabi, but Hammurabi never loses to Caesar, then his existence has no purpose, no justification, more or less. He's very random. If you manage to draw 2 events per turn in the time you play him, and if those events turn out to be, yeah, there's some cases here If they are all strength events and your opponent doesn't manage to get stronger than you, then okay, that's cool. But in my experience, it's even better if it's not all strength events. Maybe one and then neutral events, but you have all the information about that deck and can force your opponent or bait your opponent into inefficient stuff. Then he does something. But it's all RNG. Everything I said was super RNG, right? If you don't draw events with him, he does nothing. Nothing. Just a wasted selection. And that can happen. And if you draw some, yeah, like if you compare him to Sun Tzu, it's super dog shit. And yeah, maybe I don't know. In some games, the ceiling is like B, and in most cases, the floor is super bad. So yeah, our first C tier entry, I would say. Then we have Cleopatra, and here I tend to take her pretty often. I don't think she's A tier. Maybe she's A tier in some games. The thing is that there are super many combinations where she can give one rock every turn for 3-4 turns. And that's not that bad, I would say. Yeah, if you compare to Boudica, she starts her value the turn after you elect her, right? And then it's something like, let's say 3 rocks versus 2 signs or something. It's hard to measure like this, but if you manage, like the nice combination is with, the nicest combination I would say is with library. It's also a momentum thing, right? You finish something earlier than you could otherwise. That's something you have to take into the equation. You can't just, I think, look at the rock count. You also say, okay, you have some income from a wonder 1 turn earlier than you would otherwise. And maybe another income from a building then 1 turn earlier than you would have otherwise. And if you manage that, there's some combinations, like I said, library, there's the Stonehenge, Roman roads, and she works quite well with all those wonders. I think then her value is actually pretty good. And then in some cases she's a bit underwhelming if it doesn't align like this. If you don't get any combination like this. And then if you already miss 1 rock, if you don't have this, okay, I finish it 1 turn earlier than I would otherwise, then it's a bit underwhelming. Moses. Yeah, Moses goes to also B tier. I think even he's stronger than Aristotle in my book. Just, yeah, in my last entry, we saw PV4 making good use of Moses. I don't know, you have your guys earlier on. You can build a printing press earlier on. You can build some military unit earlier on. He burns through his potential value very quickly, and you just take another leader, H1 leader, and you're super happy. Yeah, compare that to Aristotle. He, in principle, gives more value because science is better than food, yes? But he doesn't burn through his value early on, and then you are stuck with the decision, do I play this H1 leader like Isabella now, or do I keep Aristotle? Super awkward, super often it happens. With Moses, it's super clear. You populate, you get your 2-3 signs, food, you get your guys out earlier to do something, and then you say, goodbye, thank you, Moses. With Aristotle, it's a little tricky. And yeah, maybe that argument is in itself a little awkward to make, but in order to assess the value, but yeah, it's still something to consider in my book. So yeah, I think I'm more happy with Moses oftentimes than with Aristotle. Confucius. And here I would say we go to top of A tier. And it might be close, S tier or A tier. But in my experience, or in my intuition, he's actually considerably weaker than Hammurabi. What he does is super high ceiling. His value is super high ceiling, and I mean good ceiling and super high floor. It's never bad. There are some cases where it's not that nice to seed into a Sun Tzu or into maybe even Caesar, into anyone who's set up well with maybe an early H1 leader to just put strength events in and then you cycle them earlier. But still, you gain a science for that. Science per turn, you get the code of laws out earlier, you get the iron out earlier, the government, super good value. And still, I would say Hammurabi is in a league on his own. And yeah, maybe just talk about Hammurabi now. There are some key cards in two-player, like Iron Code of Laws, maybe Monarchy, that you want to aggressively pick for 3 civil actions. It doesn't happen as much in 3-player, 4-player through the ages. It also happens sometimes, but in 2-player, yeah, these cards are super important, and Hammurabi enables to do that and still have a decent turn where you don't have to sacrifice anything. And the cards on 2, this argument is even more true, right? You take a card for 2 and you still have your normal turn and maybe even a Richland one on top or a breakthrough on top. And that's just more value than Confucius gives. It makes your entire early game. You control the entire game somehow, super often if you have Hammurabi. And the cost of drawing a card list is just not that high. So for me, that is a separation here in tier, actually. So Hammurabi stays the only S tier leader in this HA. So now we have Sun Tzu. Pretty hard to value, in my opinion. I will put him somewhere like here. He is the guy who can be in a nice counter pick, quote unquote. Although I would still probably in a vacuum rather play Hammurabi than against Sun Tzu than the other way around. But it's okay to say, okay, we get Sun Tzu. There's a Barbarossa in the deck. There's a Shishka in the deck. I would set up to be very annoying, very strong in H1. Very consistently draws the strength events. That's the difference. He just draws more cards than Caesar. And on top of all that, he enables colony strategies, for example, very nicely because he very consistently draws those colonies. He is a nice combination with Eleanor and then later the Suez Canal. So he has a lot of games where he does something, he does set up pressure, but he gives no economical value in himself. So that's that, yeah. While you create that threat that happens at some point, possibly, the other guys get the science per turn or civil action per turn. That's just better. So he has his place. He's not weak, but so actually an interestingly designed leader, I would say. The better tactic, the opponent will just copy at some point. Maybe it would be, I don't know, appropriate to make it a bit more expensive, the copying. He holds the tactic, so he has that one extra turn where the opponents can't do it, but it's a little meaningless, I guess. So, yeah. You can still be in the position where you reap the benefits of that tactic better than the opponent, but that's not guaranteed. Any opponent will look out for Shishka or for Barbarossa when you play Sun Tzu, so you cannot guarantee that. Yeah, that's the leaders. Oh no, we still have Hippocrates and Homer. Okay. Hippocrates. Yeah, there's a big bulk of B tier leaders actually, so that's also B tier for me. And actually here, I would say I'm pretty happy with Hippocrates in most cases. It has also something to do with the ease of decision of when do I let go of him. And maybe that's the wrong angle to explain it. The better thing is like you don't want H1 leaders give better value on average, and if one shows up, you wanna play them, right? Hammurabi is maybe the only leader I would consider to keep on playing if I, for example, get Eleanor in hand. Sometimes I just take her in hand and keep the civil action for 1 or 2 turns. Yeah. You play Hippocrates for 2 turns. 2 yellow cubes are enough. The third one is optional. It rarely does something. So be gone. And you have decent value. As I said, the timing of the early yellow cube, which comes with the cost of a civil action, versus this, is very clearly in favor of Hippocrates. If you compare it to Alexander, he's very clearly better. It's not like a tier better, maybe. Maybe it is. Maybe you can argue that Alex is here. Maybe that's a little more appropriate. But yeah, with the high ceiling, I would still put him in B tier. With those some cases where which I mentioned, I would still put him here. And then there's Homer, and he goes at the bottom in 2-player. Oh, well, he has some problems. The rock for military is bad in 2-player. And if you use it, you don't draw cards. And on top of that, he costs a civil action if you want to keep that happy face. It's super awful. The happy face is arguably a bit worse than the yellow cube, or maybe similar, but it comes with a condition to have finished a wonder already. So you can't even get rid of him as soon as Saladin turns up H2. You have to finish a wonder first. And then in total, it's super, super awkward in 2-player. 3-player, 4-player might be different because it has more value to tickle your, build up your military in H1. And yeah, maybe in some games where your opponent goes Caesar or Sun Tzu and there's a Homer, you say, yeah, okay, let's play it. No cards unplayable. I take him sometimes. It's better than taking stockpile. Yeah? Probably. But super unhappy, I guess, compared to the other options to take Homer. Let me quickly refill my coffee. That's the leaders. And let's go with the wonders, just in the same one. Acropolis. Hard to measure the value of this one. And I would say goes to A tier. The thing is, this one has a ridiculous ceiling. So in the games where it shines, it feels almost unfair. But I think the floor is also not that high. There are games where its value is more on the side of underwhelming, and thus I cannot or don't want to put it in S tier. It is a highly contested wonder in 2-player. I think it might be a bit overrated. One thing you can consider or keep in mind is if your opponent goes Acropolis. So first of all, there are some combinations of leaders and wonders. If they are in the game, then this goes straight to S tier. Like if there's Bach and Shakespeare and Darwin or something, and you already see that maybe there's even a Gandhi later on, and you already see this will be a game where the bet of going high military will be super bad. Then this goes straight to S. But if it's more of a mixed game and some military threat is realistically possible, if you can build up some pressure and your opponent cannot build 6 urban buildings for free, then the value stays rather underwhelming. So it is at the top of A tier for me, or maybe at the bottom of S tier, but the low ceiling keeps it in A, I would say. Or let's say, it's not even that low, it's like the average ceiling. Let me put it this way, if I have library next to Acropolis, next to pyramids, maybe even next to some other wonders here, then it's not totally obvious to me which one I take. I will carefully look at the leaders and wonders in the game, and I think other wonders have a more a value distribution that's not that as wide, doesn't have such high variance, and then I will settle for those rather. Colosseum, let's say probably, yes, might actually be C tier. I used it last season, maybe on a whim, in a game where everything screamed military, and I was quite happy with the game, with the choice. It was against PV4, the game that I lost in the end, because I forgot about the food. Yeah, I don't know. Everything in that game screamed that the extra MA and the happy face will be decent, and it turned out to be alright. And one aspect of the wonder is that it enables to play the Republic on a more safe side, and Republic might be the strongest card in the game in 2 players, so that is that. Yeah, but overall, you don't want to, it doesn't give you economical value. You don't want to rush that wonder, and then it's lying around there, blocks you from taking maybe decent H1 wonders. And then super often towards the end of H1, you still have this wonder on build, and you think like, I don't even want to fucking build this. it's not good enough for what it does. It is super rare situations, super rare games, I think, where it can be decent, and then it's overall probably C tier. Or maybe you can argue D tier, but it's probably C tier. Probably the worst of the bunch. Colossus. Yeah, ever since they changed it to draw 3 military cards, it has become the go-to wonder. If I see that I have access to Colossus, I look, is there a Suez Canal? And if it's in, I will take it. And then it's pretty good. And even if there's no Suez Canal and you have no other option, then it's still pretty solid. Just drawing 3 H3 cards extra. Many games stand and fall with your H3 draw, or even H2 tactic draw. So that makes it all more consistent. The 2 strength is not that important, but in some games it helps you win some strength events. 1 colonization card power is like, okay, if you pair it with a cartography, you can very safely win colonies. So a very solid BT, I would say. So pretty decent ceiling, also pretty decent floor. Yeah, classical B tier, maybe even A. Maybe it even goes A. I don't know. I think that would be too much. Then I would have to move that up. I would say it goes B tier. Hanging Gardens. Is it better than Colosseum? I think it is. If you knew that you cannot lose this to Ravages of Time, this would be a decent wonder in many situations. Some combination to create some culture income with Michelangelo, you all of a sudden win all those rebellions and immigrations, which are less likely to happen in two-player, but still. It gives you two extra people for printing presses. I think that's what the way to put it. It lets you build an extra guy to printing press for free without having to rely on some happiness solution, and it's not so bad. It's also a wonder that you don't really want to rush. And then this gain to food is actually a little awkward sometimes because it corrupts you sometimes. So it's a bit awkward. It's okay. I would say I would put it a tier above Colosseum. There's some games where I take it because there's no other option, and then it's like it's alright as long as it doesn't die, and that's the problem about the Wonder, the biggest problem. So you can say that it has an awful value flaw, because if you play it, then you obviously want to rely on those happy faces. Otherwise, the Wonder makes no sense. And then if they are gone, your civilization sometimes just like, yeah, okay, I have to disband some things, and that's just game over. So yeah, you can argue you can set up for it, take an option in hand, but even that diminishes the value. Even having to take the option in hand diminishes the value of the Wonder. So that's the very low ceiling combined with a rather average, very, very low floor with a rather average ceiling. And that's that. I don't want to know how often I have confused floor and ceiling now. Maybe not that often. Who knows? You guys will have understood it by context. There's the Library of Alexandria, and we put that in A tier. Above Acropolis. I think it's on average more value than Acro. It's probably like the ceiling is the floor is as high as the ceiling, so it's just super solid. One science, one culture per turn, and the ability to hold an extra card, both civil and military card. They are very relevant. Yeah. Never unhappy to take it. Nothing more to say. I think, yeah, it has a little more value on average than the Acro. Pyramids. You are not going there. You are going. And now it's maybe a question of taste. For the longest time, I would confidently do it like this and say pyramids may be a bit weaker than library. And recently I've started to shift it a bit. The value of this civil action doesn't diminish in the later stages of the game, even if you get a republic, even if you are the guy getting a republic, then being on 8 or even with some extra tech 9 civil actions, it doesn't get worse. The extra civil action doesn't diminish its value as much as I thought back then. Having this extra power in H3, those H3 turns are so complicated, and everything you do is super impactful still in many game states. And then this extra civil action is just mighty. And this extra civil action is mighty in the early game, obviously. In the mid game, in the late game, it doesn't diminish. So I think it's the strongest one. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's separated by a tier. Maybe, yeah, maybe not. I wouldn't go so far to say it's worse. It's that much better. It has some, I mentioned it often, that it makes some HA leaders better. And yeah, maybe worth to mention that the one leader, Cleopatra, or the one wonder Cleopatra isn't that great with is pyramids, because it's super hard to use that rock for the first stage. Then you are stuck with the decision of building a philosophy first turn, but then you just delay the fact that you can, also in most cases, you delay the fact that you can't use her for one turn. So I tend to just build the mine then, and then, I don't know. That's the one wonder. She's not that great here, but still good. So still, it's just not perfect. She still will give the value, and will in some cases build it one turn faster than other leaders. Yeah, I don't think it's justifiable to put it in S, but I think it's a bit stronger than library. Roman roads. Yeah, that's probably here. Can also argue that it's here, but I think I'd put it here. Top of B tier. I'm really not unhappy if I get it. And in some game states, the ceiling is super good. You rush it, you get the extra rock income, you have this extra yellow cube and blue cube, and then there comes an Imeji Castle, or any wonder that preferably doesn't take too many civil actions to build. I think the Imeji Castle is then my favorite. A rock dump. You really accumulate some rocks with this, and you have a rock dump like Himeji, and you can freely build it, and then this wonder shines in my book. And also has good value later. H2 the science income, H3 the culture income. It gives you what you need. The huge downside is, I think if it was 3 civil actions to build, it would be here, and the 4 civil actions to build is a big cost. So I put it here in B tier. And then the Stonehenge, and I'm sorry, I can't justify putting it. Why do I have to? Yeah, there's some games where it's super good. I had a game where I preferred the Stonehenge over the library last turn, because against Martin Pescher, I think. Because I already saw the monarchy coming, and or something else, I'm not entirely certain. And that's my argument about this wonder. If you can dump the signs that you get early on into one of these texts, Code of Law or Monarchy, then it's super good. Then it's actually super good. But if you don't, then I don't like it so much. Maybe I should give it a try more often, but cost 4 civil actions. Yeah, 1 happy phase 1. I mean, it's like, if you compare this, Brain Dead better than Hanging Gardens, but is it a tier better? Probably like this. Definitely worse than Colossus and Roman Roads in my book. Yeah, that's it for HA. I think there's nothing to discuss here, I would say. It's objective truth, obviously. Alright, that's the tier list for HA. Let me know where you are wrong, where your opinion differs from mine. Let me know, share it with me, and see you on the next one soon.